When I was just a teenager, I would often drive until the road ended, which was at a small parking lot overlooking Lake Michigan. Across the horizon loomed the skyscrapers of Chicago. I believed the whole world existed somewhere out there. When I was accepted to Harvard, I believed that I was entering the great big world beyond. And in many senses, I did. At Harvard, I studied Shakespeare and dinosaurs and even 1950s pop culture, a class called I Like Ike, but I Love Lucy, which may explain my obsession with Mad Men. Yet I was still standing on the shoreline, looking out at the horizon. I was mapping a journey I was yet to take. At graduation, that journey began. As a diligent student, I created a perfect checklist based on a number of books by Lonely Planet. Books with titles like Insert Number of Places to See/Things to Do Before You Die. Not even 24 hours into my journey, I received my first lesson not on the syllabus. It's best to tell your parents you are traveling to the other side of the world before you call them collect, asking them to wire you money. I learned this somewhere between Auckland and the Bay of Islands when life flipped my car upside down and plowed it into a tree. I was learning fast that when shit truly begins to go wrong, that's when the best journeys begin and the greatest teachers are to be found. My first teacher was also the first human being I saw after my car crash, and he scared the hell out of me, largely because he looks a lot like that guy. However, Edward gave me a cup of hot chocolate and arranged a place for me to stay that night, all without asking or expecting anything more than a postcard from my next destination, since he'd never left New Zealand. Amid flocks of sheep and in the aftermath of a totaled rental car, I was reminded that I could spend life staring out at the horizon, or I could start walking towards it. Life wasn't going to provide a due date or grant any extensions. Fast forward a few years to Australia and my next great, if unexpected, teacher, Olivia Newton-John. In Australia, I worked as an editor at a small publication where I wrote every assignment another writer couldn't cover. Which was why, in early 2008, I was in a packed photo pit, a sea of bare-chested man-flesh behind me, and Olivia Newton-John moments from taking the stage. And then, once again, shit started to go wrong. Olivia wanted more money for media to photograph her performance of Xanadu, and the venue and promoters were refusing to pay. And I became the sacrifice to the masses when security pushed me out of the media pit so that I now blocked the view of the most devout first-row fans. In that moment, I learned two important things. One, do not ever mess with a diva. And two, if the diva is Olivia Newton-John, do not, under any circumstances, come between her and her adoring gay fans, who will gouge out your eyes if you in any way block their view of the performance. After the photo pits and looming deadlines of a media job, I took a much-needed trip. A little over halfway, I visited Morocco with two college roommates. In type A fashion, we had everything planned down to the minute. Arrive in Tangier, bus to Chefchaouen, sleep, bus to Fez, soak up the old world vibes, then back to Spain. Nothing could go wrong. Or so we thought. When we reached Chefchaouen, we discovered that we had not had our passports stamped when we entered the country. How we walked into the country without passing through immigration, I still don't know. But somehow we did, and we were illegal immigrants in Morocco. We had only one option: make our way back to the port of our arrival. Unfortunately, all three of our guidebooks warned in italics, do not visit the port of Tangier at night. So, as night fell over the bus, we fell into silent contemplation as to what exactly those italics meant. Which is when a Moroccan woman in front of us turned around and said hello. Nora spoke perfect English and turned out to be our guardian angel. After she arranged for our passports to be stamped, she took us in for 3 days as the honored guests of her family. As a good Muslim, she believed it was her duty to care for strangers in need, just as strangers had cared for the Prophet Muhammad for 3 days in his time of need. On another trip, at another bus stop in Dalat, Vietnam, I met Lou, an unofficial motorcycle tour guide. I took one look at the testimonials in Lou's guest book and abandoned my itinerary for 5 days and over 1,000 kilometers on back of his motorbike. Together, we saw the Central Highlands, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the Mekong Delta. But the Vietnam I most remember was not any of the places we visited. It was Lou himself. On our third day, during a smoke break, Lou told me that his father had been killed by Americans in the war. Did it bother him to play tour guide for Americans, I asked. No, he said. Once, he even took an American vet on his bike. Most recently, my travels have brought me to Seoul, where I know quite a few teachers. Here, like many of you, I've become increasingly used to the revolving door of expat life. Strangers have rapidly become like family, only to be whisked away to some new destination. Over the past few years, I have luckily developed a cosmic emergency plan to handle this situation. This plan was hatched on the floor of my first Seoul apartment, when a good friend named James, minutes from leaving for Incheon Airport and a flight to New York, unfurled an antique map of the world and kneeled in front of it. He circled the island of Bouvet, the world's most remote island, and wrote, "Meet here in case of emergency." In the 12 years since I left my hometown of Chesterton, Indiana, I've covered a lot of ground metaphorically and geographically, and last year I made a rare trip back to Chesterton. Halfway into my visit, I was walking down Main Street when I decided to pay an inaugural visit to our town's tavern, Flannery's. At Flannery's, a full plastic cup of stale Guinness sells for 75 cents. I ordered one and sat. The man next to me, Ed, dispensed wisdom in a steady pour of words. Now in his 60s, he was waylaid decades earlier in Indiana on a trip west, a trip founded on his belief to move always, stop never, and take the side road bearing left at every opportunity. He stopped bearing left while still east of the Mississippi, and now his only detour was to a bar stool. When I walked out of Flannery's, I added Ed to a long list of unofficial life professors I have encountered. On the streets of my hometown once again, I remembered standing on the shore and looking at the horizon. As it turned out, I'd been in the classroom of life all along.